see you all. How are you, Tony? How are you? Corey, how are you? Eloise, Kenneth, how are you? Great to have you all coming in. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to swiftly hand over to Alistair, but in the meantime, I'll just say a couple of housekeeping things. This is being recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So if you do have to leave or take a call, you won't miss anything. You will be able to go back over it. And if you are watching this on our YouTube channel, please press like and subscribe so that we can increase the recognition of our brilliant industry. So Alistair, I'll just hand straight to you, if that's okay.
Perfect. Yes, thank you very much. Thanks, Dom. Great, thank you. So yes, thank you very much, Dom. This is our latest state of the industry discussion, specifically from an RMC and DSP perspective. As Dom said, the session's being recorded, so if you are watching on YouTube, then absolutely like and subscribe away. If you're watching live and you want to add a question, please do so in the chat, and I'll do my best to get to it. If I don't, it's because I'm not particularly good at multitasking, as I think I've mentioned before, and my wife regularly reminds me, so we can talk about the questions, hopefully in Seville, when we see each other in person, but we'll do our best. I'll do my best to get to the questions in the chat today. So we have a fantastic panel. We have 6 panelists, 3 RMCs, 3 DSPs, and I'm sure most of you watching will know all 6, but for those of you that don't, I'm going to ask all of you in turn, if that's okay, just to briefly introduce yourself and say who you are and where you're from, and then just give a very quick update to start with on where we're at in terms of activity, what we're hearing from clients. For some of us, it's 2 years of being within the pandemic, so just a brief idea of exactly what's happening within your organization and what you're hearing from clients would be great. So Mary, maybe if I start with you, for you to introduce yourself and give us a quick update.
Thanks, Alistair. Hi, everyone. I'm Mary DeVoe, Director of Global Supply Chain at Weichert. I'm based in the US. And to answer your question, Alistair, we've actually seen an increase of over 30%, about 32% for DSP services in 2021 over 2020, and even higher in some of the other services, including, some of the ancillary services for most of the part of, including like the top saying 10 to 15 countries. So that's what we're seeing. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome. Marie.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Alistair. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Marie O'Neill. I'm the Managing Director of EuRA. Our headquarters is based in Dubai, offering services across the Middle East. So what we're seeing is, so since September last year, a big increase in volume. Some of that was a backlog, obviously, but now a lot of new initiations coming through. And I suppose Dubai as a whole is very busy at the moment, with the expo is going on here since last September, October to March. We're seeing a big increase from corporates, employees moving here, and also individuals and high net worth individuals who are moving their families here from places like Hong Kong, Singapore, and even Europe, because Dubai was seen in a very positive light during the whole COVID times. There weren't any big lockdowns. So yeah, it's all very positive here, and volume is quite good at the moment.
Excellent, good. Pleased to hear it. Rob, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Alistair. Rob Burns. I'm the CEO of EuRA Global Services. We're based in Chicago. And similar to what Mary said, we've seen a big uptick in volume. Really started last kind of March, April, a little earlier than we thought it was going to, but kind of coincided with visas and immigration opening up in the States. And it really has just been full throttle since then. There's no let up after the the summer rush, and it's been really, really strong for the last 10, 11 months at this point. So really positive on that front. I'd say the flip side of that is, with the growth coming back maybe a little quicker than we thought it was going to, it's been a little bit of a scramble on the talent side, and I know we're going to talk more about that. But just hiring, keeping up with the the demand, tight labor market. So much better problem to have than we did in 2020, but still some challenges.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you. Fiona, can you give us an update from space, or are we going to concentrate on planet Earth?
Sure, Alistair. Hi, everybody. Fiona Redford of Cartus, Supply Chain Director for EMEA and APAC regions. And like everyone else, we're extremely pleased to see volumes increasing again, certainly not up to the levels of 2019, but making progress in the right direction. And our clients are more than eager to not only move employees due to new projects, but also the backlog of employees we've had sitting pending for months upon months. So thankfully now we're seeing movement with them as well.
Good, very good. It's all very positive. Jeremy, to you.
Thanks, Alistair, and hi, everyone. So Jeremy Bertou, I'm Managing Director for Home Conseil Relocation, a DSP and immigration services provider based in France. And I'm just going to echo everybody's point of view. The crisis is behind us from a strictly business perspective. We're still at the end of a big wave here in France, but still the country is running, business is moving, and companies are still going ahead with mobility projects, which is perfect from our perspective, obviously, but causing some of Rob's problems as well. So all in all, it's good problems to have, and very much a relief from my perspective.
Absolutely, excellent, very good. And Simon, last but not least.
Thank you. My name is Simon Scott. I'm VP for MEF Altair Global, based in London. Altair has seen quite a big growth over really even through the pandemic. What we've seen is that certain sectors seem to have stayed strong and others seem to have taken a more cautious approach. So amongst our client base, we've seen broadly continuing growth through 2020 and into 21 and now continuing into 22. But we've also seen some of our other clients who take a much more cautious approach, and they're just starting again to come back. We've also seen that certain countries seem to have been stronger than others. UK seems to have been particularly strong, but also Ireland seems to have done very well. Other countries, based upon what's been happening there locally, so the Netherlands, for instance, has been a bit more sluggish because they've had longer periods of lockdowns, which has had sort of an adverse impact on their activity. But yeah, again, reiterating what Rob said, our biggest challenge right now is just finding people to come and put bums on seats.
Okay, good. It's really great to hear. I think we're all incredibly worried about a year and a half ago, and just to hear how everybody is bouncing back and people are moving again is excellent. So really good perspective from around the world. And so to move that conversation on, I feel like we have some interesting topics to cover. It's a fascinating time, I think, at the moment for our industry, because I've no idea where we are in terms of the pandemic, whether we're at the beginning of the end. I don't think anybody really knows, but some topics seem to be at the forefront of everyone's mind at the moment, one of which 2 or 3 of you already mentioned, and that is there seems to be a global talent shortage in all industries. We're hearing that in the US, figures are at a 10-year high, and some predictions for 2030 are millions of vacancies in certain industries. So in terms of that talent shortage, I'd be really interested to get a perspective from a couple of you, and then widen the conversation around what you're hearing from your clients and how it's impacting our industry. Maybe Fiona, if I could start with you, what are you seeing? What are you hearing from your clients?
Yeah, really interesting. We've even heard from prospects who don't currently have relo programs in place, and they're now looking to implement relocation assistance in order to recruit talent globally. So certainly we're also seeing some of our clients offering additional relocation assistance, whether that's pre-decision options to encourage the employee to move to the host location, or additional services when actually relocating. And again, I think it depends on the industry as well as the goals within the companies, because some of our clients, for instance, are more focused on cost savings, and they've got very aggressive targets in place, and therefore they have actually been reducing the benefits and repatriating expats as part of a cost saving and restructure plan as well. So totally a bit of a mixed bag, but definitely even within Cartus as well, you've got a focus area on talent retention, retaining and recruiting talent as well.
Excellent. So it could be seen as a positive for our industry, with increased packages and an increase in retaining talent. Simon, are you seeing something similar, or what's your experience?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing similar things. Certainly, one of the interesting sectors in particular is the tech sector and how that's responding to the talent shortage. We've definitely seen certain clients where they initially started for quite slim packages. They have struggled to recruit with such packages, and they have increased them. So we've gone from sort of an unaccompanied to a 1 day to now to 2 day, just because they need to be able to incentivize potential employees to come and join them. I think we're also seeing, and this could be particularly useful for our industry, is that we're seeing that rather than setting up in locations because that's where the talent is, what we're now seeing is that companies are setting up in locations knowing full well they're going to need to bring people to those locations, because the idea that one country is going to be enough of a talent pool is no longer the case. They need to be able to stretch far and wide to attract people. And so we're seeing more and more, again, particularly within the tech sectors, we're seeing more and more cities being seen as sort of tech hubs where companies are setting up. So we've known for a long time London is a tech hub, but we're now seeing places like Lisbon, Berlin, Dublin, Amsterdam is now coming up. So there's lots more of these hubs being created, and the companies are setting up there knowing full well they're going to have to bring people in from far and wide into those hubs. So if you happen to be a DSP with one of those hub locations, it's happy times.
What kind of challenges or opportunities is that bringing, do you think?
Well, I think, if the main challenge is really in the housing market. If we look at places like Dublin, for instance, we've had a really tough housing market there for quite a long time. We're now starting to see similar things happening in London, and we know Amsterdam is equally tough. So the experience that we've got in Dublin in particular was that you can't find 1-bedroom flats anymore. They just don't exist. And if they turn up, they get snatched up in 2 seconds. You'll literally have 20 people trying to apply for the same property on the same day. So now what we're seeing is an increased focus on sharers, and that creates a number of challenges. You've got to find 2 people that want to share together, and then you get some cultural challenges starting to come to the fore and those kind of things. So but that's the way that we're seeing a lot of these markets where it's particularly tight. That's what they're having to deal with, and the DSPs are front and center on having to manage that. Yeah,
okay, yeah, I'm definitely hearing that a lot from major cities around the world. Jeremy, coming to you, is that what you're experiencing too? Are you seeing the effects of that in your region, in your country?
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, the global talent shortage is both a positive driver to the business, as Fiona said. It's really putting mobility at the front and center of companies' efforts to retain or gain talent, and that's definitely, I think, a big driver in the African business that we've seen in the past few months, but also a negative in the sense that our own industry was so badly hit during the pandemic that many many people drove away from the mobility industry, whether it is in management or in local consultants. So it's hard to find the right people. I've just hired somebody yesterday, and I'm glad that I managed to do it. It's probably not the last person I'll hire this year, and it's become a good challenge. But it's I think both sides are very positive for the industry. In terms of housing market, it is a challenge, but I guess it's a challenge that comes after a period where the housing market was a little bit softer during the pandemic. Everybody wanted to get out of the cities, which are really the tense areas in France. I'm thinking about Paris, obviously, which is where nobody wanted to live. As compared to Dubai, it was really a hellish place to live during the lockdown.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm hearing that as well from a number of different locations where the pressure on consultants, whether they're freelance or part of the organization, to find housing stock is incredible. And so what you could potentially do in one day, you might now be doing as a consultant over 3-4 days, but not able to necessarily charge any more. So the pressure there is definitely growing. It's it's an interesting time. Is that something that you would echo, Marie? I know sometimes you don't always follow the trends that we're experiencing in Europe, so you're going to tell us it's different.
Yeah, no, very similar to what everyone's been saying, and similar to what Jeremy says. The talent shortage is both positives and negatives. The positive is on the business side, and definitely, our clients and the packages, prior to the pandemic, they had dropped to average, 1.5 or 2 days of service. Now we're looking at 3, 4, and 5 days, and sometimes unlimited packages. So, and I think that's down to, from the whole COVID situation, the duty of care has increased. Yeah. And as well, with the talent shortage, to get that talent, people have, companies have to go the extra mile and give them as much benefits as they possibly can, and to retain staff as well, So I think we're definitely seeing, a big change and a big shift in that side. And I suppose, the negative of it then is from a personal perspective and from a business perspective, we're currently recruiting for 3 people. We just can't get staff. And, people have left for various reasons. Some people have been poached by some of the big 4, which we can't compete against, and salaries have doubled basically. So it's very hard. Others have decided to go back to their home countries because of the whole COVID times. Most people here, 85% of the population are expats. So there's been a big shift there. And as well, people have just handed in their notice and gone to no jobs. They just don't want to work. And, they've suffered through the whole COVID time. So yeah, it's from a running a business perspective, the hardest thing at the moment is retaining staff and getting staff. And, for the first time ever, we're using recruiters now. It's a great time for recruiters, in my opinion. We always hired ourselves internally, but we just can't find the people anymore. And I suppose from a housing perspective then for, our clients and assignees, kind of similar to what Simon said, but on a different end of the scale. What we can't find here in Dubai is high-end properties, your 3, 4, 5-bedroom villas, and the luxury end, properties that are renting for 300,000 euros a year rent, we can't find for our clients. So there's a huge shortage on the high-end market of properties here.
Okay, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I think all these different elements affect one another. The pressure on organizations to retain their talent, as well as housing stock being at a premium. I think someone in the comments has already used the phrase an overheated housing market. I find this really interesting. Rob, is this your experience? Is this what you're coming across in the States as well?
Definitely. And I think with we should consider opening an office in Dubai if you're getting 3 to 5 days destination services programs. Because anecdotally, we do hear about, obviously there's the war for talent and, benefits are, so key to that. But we continue to see shorter programs. The cost cutting side of it, I think, overall still weighs pretty strong. So we're seeing shorter programs and a much tighter housing market. And it's not just the big cities, it's really everywhere. As Simon said, you're going into the second tier, but even beyond that. So all the markets are tight, program time is shorter, and it's more challenging when the markets are like this to find housing. So really, one of the key things is expectation setting, where we are saying, you have to be prepared to pay more than a colleague who came here a year ago or 2 years ago. If something meets 75% of what you're looking for, take it on the spot. You have to move quickly. And this is where, if the expectation setting starts just with the DSP, it's kind of too late at that point. So what we'd like to see is it starting with the global mobility team at a corporation, then the RMC reinforcing that. So by the time it gets to us, the assignee is hearing it for the 3rd time and it's starting to sink in a little bit. And I'd say overall, the alignment with RMCs, they get it. And the alignment's been really good in terms of starting to set those expectations. But those are the kind of the 2 sides to the challenges that we're seeing on the housing right now.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Just Fiona, would you concur with that as well? I'm just going to bring in a question from the chat, and I'm not sure if there's any easy answer, But somebody, Ian McMillan, said, are you seeing a desire for short-term assignments as we emerge from COVID, or still seeing demand for conventional long-term assignments? Can we generalize, or is it client specific, or what are you seeing, Fiona?
It can be client specific as well, but it seems to be at the moment, definitely, it's totally mixed, again, depending on the industry, depending on the location as well. As I say, we have seen a impact globally with demand exceeding supply. So it's not just because the relocation industry is more active again, but in places like Central Eastern Europe, for example, more locals are renting properties, which in turn reduces the options for expats. We've also seen in places like Korea or Australia, there's been changes in government regulations impacting tax, etc., for property owners, and that's further reducing the property options for expats. So again, to the short term or the longer term options, again, it's very much client specific. It's the employees, depending on what group they come under, the employees as well as the markets as well. But as Rob touched on, this is probably the most important thing. It's about the expectation setting, and it's also from the DSPs, but starting with the clients. So what we've been recommending to the clients as well is making sure that expectation setting with the relocation employees is starting at their end within global mobility. Our IECs within operations are reiterating that fact. And then the DSPs to make sure that they're making sure the challenges are explained to the assignees. Some timelines aren't being met. The delivery service is sometimes impacted because of various challenges in markets. So just making sure that that's made clear to the assignee up front. What we're also doing is making sure it's emphasized, maximize the time spent with the DSP, encourage the relocating employees to use the technology and resources provided to pre-screen properties and research the location they're moving to. We know such high demand for properties. Obviously, the rentals have increased in various markets. So we also encourage our clients to regularly review housing budgets to ensure that they align with current market conditions as well. So there's a lot everybody can do, and as long as we're all doing the right thing, then it will certainly help towards a successful move.
Absolutely. So I
was just going to say, one of the challenges that we've seen is within the largest companies out there that are working in particularly competitive sectors, they'll have their own recruitment teams within the company. And one of the challenges that we've seen, of course, is the goal of the recruitment team is to get people to join the company. And so they don't necessarily want to set expectations. They want us to paint the world is happy and rosy and moving to London is the most wonderful thing ever. And then, of course, then the reality comes the moment they hit the DSPs. And there can be such a big mismatch between the two. It's quite a challenge then for the DSPs to manage that because the expectation setting already has happened and it's not necessarily the right way. So that's making things pretty tough as well.
Absolutely. I'm just going to throw in another random thought, my question rather than from the chat. But we talk a lot about expectation setting, and we have to adapt to what's happening in the markets at any one time. And a conversation I've had recently internally is around the cost of energy and the cost of utility bills that assignees will be paying, and the fact that we need to prepare our assignees for some pretty incredible increases in the cost of electricity and gas. Is that something you've considered as a company or something you're talking to about your clients? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on my random question. That's a no.
We haven't seen that, although to be honest, it's a fairly good point. One of the things that we've seen recently, and actually I was having a conversation this morning, and it's being experienced in Ireland, UK and Netherlands, is that properties, when they get taken on currently, aren't ready. They're not clean a lot of the time. And that's because there's, again, shortages of things like cleaning staff made to make properties available for when people move in. And that's something the DSPs are having to deal with at the moment, because you know, the first thing they're getting the moment these people move in. We had one person moved into a property yesterday and found a dirty pair of socks under the bed. You know, they weren't particularly pleased. But that's something we're seeing a big problem. And even, you know, when they move in, something's not working, trying to get somebody to come and fix it, it's taking a lot longer than it used to. There is just the general shortage of staff is impacting in so many different ways, not just in terms of what we're doing or our employee, our clients, but also in terms of, you know, repair people, cleaners, everything. It's right across the board, and that's having an impact on the experience of assignees moving into places.
Yeah, and Alistair, back to your question regarding increased in electricity, we were actually approached by a client regarding that, and they wanted us to go out to our DSPs to determine, you know, in certain locations where the increase was and what the rate of increase was. So that is actually something that was a concern of a client that we did have recently.
Yeah, and Alistair, Alistair, we also arrange webinars by our DSPs that we share with our client services teams, and then them in turn obviously share that with our clients as well. And that's something it's touched on. It's not just about the housing market and rentals, etc. It's about the cost of living in that location as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Yeah,
great.
and the other thing I wanted to just share, just when you were talking about different trends, is one of the things that we've seen over the past year is clients asking us for information on global domestic moves. And what I mean by that is not an expat or a third country national moving domestically, but actually a country national moving from one location to another within the country. Some of the countries, it's been China, Brazil, India, and some of the other ones. And the requests for policies that are a little bit more consistent somewhat on the benefits anywhere in the world, determining their needs to move domestically. And obviously some of the reasons for driving these domestic programs in the past couple of years has been COVID-related shutdowns and travel restrictions and compliance concerns, and the difficulty attracting talent at all levels. So they've been, you know, ability to handle remote and hybrid work requests. So we are expecting an increase in domestic permanent moves with a bigger decrease expected in long-term assignments.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting, really interesting. So I feel like we do face a number of challenges at the moment. They're not necessarily new challenges, but they're more heightened. So we've talked about managing expectations for an awful long time, but it seems more critical than ever. And as well as, you know, some of us are growing and looking to hire staff, but struggling to find the right people. Seems more heightened as well than ever. But I think maybe they're good problems to have, because, again, going back a year and a half, you would have said we're going to be in this position and these are our biggest challenges, then we probably would have taken that. So it's certainly an interesting time. I'm glad you're smiling and nodding your head, Jeremy. That's good. And one of the other topics that we wanted to discuss, I think, falls into that category. Something we've talked about a lot over the years, but feels absolutely critical right now. Potentially was somewhat of a box ticking exercise, you know, a long time ago now is really important to all of us, is sustainability. And this will be covered in detail at the conference in Seville, but I thought it'd be interesting to get your take on the practicalities really, and what's happening in a sort of tangible sense in terms of what clients are saying and how that's affecting how we're operating and supplier selection. So maybe, Mary, could I start with you and just ask what the current view is from Weikert on sustainability within our industry?
Sure. So we're definitely seeing it pop up more and more in client conversations, and even particularly as a component of RFPs that we're bidding on, there's questions regarding around ESG and CSR, you know, all the acronyms that you hear about sustainability. Weikert actually is registered with a company called EcoVadis, which is a global CSR rating company based on international standards, and they have conducted a sustainability performance assessment with us, including feedback of our strengths and areas of improvement. Some of the items that we're able to demonstrate through our global supply chain, particularly on, you know, some of them on the household goods side, is a reduction in carbon emissions, reusable packaging and recycled materials, other things just across the board within our company and supply chain is paperless offices, the CSR acronym, which is corporate social responsibility. We have a huge involvement with Move for Hunger and some other charities. And recently we partnered with Talent Beyond Borders, which I think everyone is aware of, that not-for-profit agency that helps refugees and other displaced people finding work. We're increasing our D&I initiatives, and we also partner with a discard and donate company, which demonstrates a reduction in cardboard, paper, and showing tree planting statistics through participation of that program. So we're putting together a plan to invite supply chain to participate in this EcoVadis assessment to get a grade, and additional helpful information on how suppliers can elevate their initiatives in this space.
Excellent. Okay, and are you seeing that shift then? Because I know obviously when you're selecting suppliers, we all know the importance of our costs, our fees, and we know the importance of the quality scores. But is sustainability, is our impact on the environment catching those two up in terms of supplier selection?
You know, I think I don't know if it'll be the total end all of the selection. I think it'll be a question on the RFP that will ask what their initiatives are. We want to be in a position that if a client or prospect comes to us, we have a lot of details and stats on not only Weicker, but our supply chain initiatives in that space as well. I mean, it's something that's we're going to see an increase in the ask for it. So I think we want to be prepared. But I wouldn't say it's the main criteria to select a supplier, so to speak. But I think it's good to have everybody aware of it and be knowledgeable about it.
Absolutely. And Fiona, would you agree? What are you saying?
Yeah, totally, Alistair. It is a major focus area, and stakeholders are becoming more vocal in their demands and requirements for this. So Cartus reports all our global impact goals to the Carbon Disclosure Project and EcoVadis, as Mary touched on as well. And in 2021, we received the EcoVadis Silver designation, which places Cartus among the top 25 of performers evaluated by the leading supplier sustainability platform in the field. And you mentioned tick box exercise, but yes, it certainly isn't that anymore. Clients are looking for us to report measurables, including that of our downstream suppliers. So we're working very closely with our network to monitor their sustainability programs in order that we can provide the clients with these comprehensive reports. And Cartus also conducts a Supplier Global Citizenship Award among our global supplier network. And the winner is awarded based on their impact to the local or global community in the realms of sustainability, volunteerism, as well as diversity.
Excellent. Okay, very good. And Rob, would you agree? Are you seeing the same from clients, not just RMCs, but direct clients as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, would echo what Mary and Fiona said. Yeah, I think for DSPs, to have a real commitment to this, it does add administrative work. I mean, you have to have a real focus and spend time on it. So a few things that we've done recently, we've created the role of sustainability manager, which is an employee who's spending about, depending on the month, 10 to 20% of her time leading that effort for us. We also really began kind of looking internally with an audit, where are we starting, what policies can we put in place to make improvements, and where we're going shortly is towards measurement and and reporting back to clients of results. So a lot going on there. It is an important effort, but also having commitments to this, to CSR, to everything else. It takes time, and it takes it adds some expenses.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give us maybe an example or two of some things you've done or your sustainability manager has done to try and reduce the impact?
Sure. We weren't starting from scratch, so we've been paperless. We've been remote as everyone else has for a while, but we have been paperless and been doing things to reduce consumption there and with water. So a few initiatives that we've launched this year are, we have in all our communications with consultants, we now have green tips and advice. So in our newsletters, podcasts, we are sharing things that they can be doing to make a difference. And I think we initially thought, well, it's the movers and companies like that can have much more of an impact. But when we really look at it, there are a lot of things, even if they're smaller things, that the consultants can be doing in the field to work with the assignees to really make an impact. So we're adding a checklist of here are 10 different things that you can do during a program that will make a difference, and that's what we hope to be reporting back to clients shortly.
Very good. Sounds very impressive. Jeremy, would you like to add to that?
Oh yeah, well, we've embarked on a journey towards carbon neutrality a year ago now. I can definitely echo Rob's position that it is time consuming, but it's also a rewarding exercise. We actually conducted a sustainability assessment for the whole company, both internally and also for the upstream and downstream surrounding the company last year for both 2020 and 2019, and we were not surprised to see that there was a roughly 30% decrease in 2020 of our carbon emissions compared to 2019, which is akin to our drop in business during the same period. And the next logical step to that assessment was to offset our carbon emissions for the year, and also to embark on a much longer journey towards carbon neutrality, because we actually found out that, well, unsurprisingly, most of our emissions sit with our consultants on the ground. So I think this is the beginning of a kind of a new age in terms of service delivery, and we've actually started implementing with our own supplier contracts with our local consultants,
Right.
an incentive for them to use either an electric car, public transportation, and so on, so that, well, we can start acting on where most of the carbon is emitted within our activity. So this is really, I think, a subject that you want to get on early in the wave rather than after the wave has passed, because it's gonna get much harder to climb back from a more negative position, and anticipation will be key in getting forward on that topic.
Definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Feels more important than ever, I feel, at the moment. And yeah, when I say it probably was a tick box exercise a long time ago, but absolutely is not the case now. And
not anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, Simon or Marie, if you have anything to add at all.
No, we're doing the same sort of EcoVadis activity as well now, and we have seen it from clients insisting upon it. That certainly during RFPs, it's one of the big sort of items now that seems to come up quite a lot more. So definitely something it's not going to be a tick in the box activity. It's become much more important than that.
Yeah, definitely to agree on that. We're seeing it a lot more on requests, RFP requests. I'm getting several emails to fill out sustainability surveys, DE&I, that, we started looking at it last year. And I suppose I was quite surprised when I started studying it that there's a lot more to sustainability than just the environmental aspect of it. And, as we know, Dubai isn't the most environmental city in the world. And I thought, okay, we're not really doing anything. But then when I looked at it and the whole area of sustainability, I realized that we're actually doing quite a lot, and especially around our people. So now we've put an ESG framework in place. We're looking at our governance, and sustainability is a big part of our strategic objectives for this year. So yeah, it's definitely an area that's not going away, and I think we all need to work on and focus on a lot more moving forward.
Definitely. Okay, definitely. Great. Okay, so again, to round up the first two topics we've spoken about, it does feel like there is pressure on us at the moment as an industry. So we are under pressure from clients. Expectations are higher, fees are being scrutinized, as well as looking at our impact on the environment. And like you say, Rob, that has a cost element to it as well as it being absolutely necessary to do, then hiring an extra manager or looking at these initiatives does have a cost. So I feel one possible solution that some companies are looking at with all those things in mind is the idea that maybe there's strength in togetherness and in unity. And I think that's why a number of organizations have looked at mergers or acquisitions. And we maybe saw that before the pandemic. There were some rumors during the pandemic, and maybe now is the time that we'll start to see a little bit more activity this year and next. I just wondered whether you'd agree, whether you think that is a trend, whether you think that is something that's going to happen more in the next year or two. I know, Marie, you covered this last week in a session. So maybe, Simon, if I start with you, what are your thoughts on that, on the future of mergers and acquisitions within our industry, maybe starting from an RMC perspective?
Well, I think it's interesting across the industry. It's the pandemic did have an initial big impact with a number of RMCs, but there's no doubt there are probably a couple of RMCs that you could look at right now, and they're not in the most comfortable positions, I think. So I think we will see a bit of consolidation in the RMC market. I think as we go down into the supply chain, I think we're seeing a number of different factors coming to the fore, and some of it's being technology driven. So we're seeing new players entering into the market, coming at it from tech perspectives. But I think what's interesting is that it's I think it's, you know, as you look at the kind of tech solutions, as the markets are becoming more challenging. So some of the stuff that we were referencing earlier about more challenging housing markets, and some of the rules around that exist within certain countries, you know, they're not necessarily getting any easier. So some of the legislative stuff that's coming along. So the need to be on the ground and to be part of that community, I think, is becoming much more important as time goes on. And so some of the kind of new entrants who come up with a nice shiny app and say, here you go, I can do everything remotely. I get the impression that there's an awful lot of smoke and mirrors there. And actually, when you dig into the detail, what you find is that there's some distinct risk in the model that they have. So I think certainly from a DSP perspective, they're still very much at the moment. I think a lot of DSPs took on a lot of technology through the pandemic because it was a necessity to evolve because of the situation on the ground. And I think that's probably left a lot of DSPs in a much stronger position post-pandemic than they were before. But I think one of the things that is going to start having an impact is the cost base. I think people are becoming more expensive. I think the general costs within, whether that be fuel or technology costs, I mean, everything's going to become much more expensive. And so for a lot of companies, whether they be DSPs or other suppliers, or even RMCs, it's going to be much more difficult nowadays. And especially because what we're able to charge clients has traditionally been quite sticky. You know, it's not necessarily gone up in line with costs. And I think we're going to see a lot of pressure on pricing this year. And that's going to create some challenges for RMCs, for DSPs and other suppliers. And that may very well facilitate sort of further M&A type activity. So it's going to be a very interesting year, I feel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Interesting to see that when you mentioned some of the new entrants to the market with an app that can promise to do everything remotely, and you think that's smoke and mirrors. Rob, Jeremy, and Marie and I were all nodding furiously, obviously, thinking, yeah, I don't think that's the future. Rob, what would you add to that? What would you say in terms of the forecast for potential mergers and acquisitions?
Sure, I think Simon's spot on. The last couple of years, I think people thought we'd see a little more activity when the market went down as much as it did. But if you're a seller, you were saying, look at my 2019 numbers. And if you're a buyer, you're saying, no, it's 2020, 2021. And it was too big of a gap to bridge. So as the numbers start to get back to more normalized levels, you factor in all the trends that Simon talked about, where scale does become important with investing in talent, technology, a number of other initiatives. It certainly seems like the market is definitely more ripe than it has been the last few years, that the trends are there, that you should see further consolidation. So I think with that backdrop, in a very highly fragmented market, I would think you'd continue to see more moves, certainly at the DSP level, potentially at the RMC level also.
And Do you see that as a good thing for our industry, or do you think it's a threat? How do you see that?
I think it depends on the company. If I don't know if it's necessarily a good or a bad thing, but M&A is just it's a reality. And if you're looking to expand geographically or at scale or potentially add a technology that's going to be too difficult to develop on your own, those are all strategically really good reasons to be considering acquisitions. This is also an industry where the barriers to entry are pretty light. You don't need a lot of capital or buildings to become a DSP. So there is a benefit to having scale and being able to comply with everything that you need to, with having technology that meets customer expectations, but also data security and all the back end. So there certainly are some benefits.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, good. Excellent. We do have some questions in the chat, which I'll come to in a moment. Feel free to add more if you're listening and want to contribute or ask a question. I feel though, to kind of wrap this up for the next 10-15 minutes or so, I'm going to ask you a question that I think you've probably all been asked quite a lot in the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's a very difficult question to answer, but we'll try anyway. And that's maybe just to look forward and just consider, based on some of the things you've mentioned in the last sort of 45 minutes, what you see as the future of our industry, 2022 and beyond. Maybe Mary, if I start with you.
Well, for sure, organizations have gone through major transformations over the past couple of years, including looking at new skill sets. For example, a more agile workforce, watching the evolution of remote and hybrid workers and talent needs. We're seeing companies trying to adapt with the acceleration of digital requirements, including AI, which seems to be becoming more important. We're seeing a big shift in international new hire policies with attracting employees into different parts of the business. So in particular, like tech, as some of us have talked about, it seems to be more core to other divisions within the organization than traditional roles. So, as it pertains to technologies, what companies are looking for. And I think some of that, it definitely is a convenient and highly curated information that they have at their fingertips, involving in a way it will integrate into all aspects of mobility program. But, we're still a people business. And I've said this before, I think the human element is still critical to the process in most instances. And maybe that technology is more for, like I said, a lower tier employee, but I don't see the DSP model going away completely. I really don't. But the bottom line is to understand what we need to do differently in 2022 than we did in 2019. And we're all figuring out, what that is. And these sessions are so helpful and informative to bring us all together as an industry and as partners to brainstorm and collaborate how to navigate through the next year and beyond. So I thank my industry colleagues for their input and great feedback for these sessions.
Very good. Thank you very much. Fiona?
Yeah, totally agree with Mary. I mean, it is the people industry. It's all about people, and they are the ones that are delivering the service. So we're never going to move away from that. Tech is a big part. I think we possibly will see more moving to core flex, for example. So the core services being delivered, but possibly, as we know, some of our DSPs offers the self-serve option as well. Possibly we'll see some more of that coming out. For the DSPs, I actually hope so, because they've obviously invested so much time in finance, creating this system and process. So it'd be great for them as well. I think we definitely will move away from lump sum. It didn't really take off, certainly from a Carter's perspective. It was predominantly just in US domestic rather than international. Right. We've actually heard as well, companies that did roll out or went down the lump sum model, it's actually impacted their retention model as well. So again, when we're looking at employing talent, retaining talent, why would you go down that route, and giving somebody, here's a pocket of money, go and spend it, we don't care what you do with it, kind of thing. It's about making sure the focus is on the employees and making sure they feel special. As we know, I'm sure most companies are doing whatever possible to retain and protect their talent. And whether that's, through not just salaries and benefits, but recognition awards, bonus schemes, job opportunities, etc. And that includes Cartus, because especially now that we're seeing volume increasing, that's a major focus for us as well, as I say, to retain our talent as well as employing new talent as well. So yeah, I definitely see that's where the focus will be.
Excellent. Okay, great. Fantastic. I don't know what everyone thinks that's listening around the world, but this is making me feel incredibly optimistic. This sounds great. Marie, maybe your turn. What do you see for the future?
Yeah, look, I agree with what Mary and Fiona have been saying. And definitely, look, I think things are a lot more positive for our industry in the future now than they were before the pandemic back in 2019. And I think for a few reasons, the duty of care has definitely risen, with the talent war as well. Companies have to invest and offer a lot more to their assignees, which obviously benefits the DSPs. And from definitely from a DSP perspective, I think the whole pandemic showed that we are needed. On the ground expertise is needed, and as well from a technology perspective, yes, it's important, but I think we've all seen now that it's not everything, that we need the hybrid model. We need a mix of people and technology. Our industry is a service industry, and the people are extremely important. Yes, the technology is important, but it's a mix of both. Technology isn't everything. And I think the future is very bright from a DSP perspective anyway.
Very good. Jeremy, you feeling optimistic?
Yeah, I do, and going beyond what Mary just said, I think I feel optimistic for not only the DSP but the DSP RMC couple in the future of the industry, because it's the perfect match to both deliver local expertise with global capability, knowledge, and I would say a capacity to serve many markets. So really, I think if the pandemic has taught us anything, is that we're an essential business, and that we will continue to be an essential business in an ever globalizing world. So yeah, I'm very optimistic about the very near future and the long-term future of the industry.
Excellent. Okay, great. It's a shame, like I say, you can't look into the eyes of the people in the audience to see if they agree, see if they're nodding or shaking their head or getting cross.
We see them.
Yeah, but it does feel optimistic, which I think is remarkable, right? From what the conversations we were having a year and a half ago, where it felt like the world had stopped turning almost, and no one could go anywhere. And when were the lights going to go out? To a point where we're saying it's been a very valuable time for our industry. We're potentially stronger now than we were then. Is remarkable. Simon, would you agree?
Yeah, and actually, I'd sort of follow up on what Jeremy was saying. I think what we will see is that certainly from a customer experience, what will happen is we're going to see much more integration between DSPs and RMCs. I think that's where the real push for technology is likely to be, because I think if anything we learned through the pandemic was that that communication between RMCs and DSPs and the customer base became all the more important. And I think it's made us realize that there is almost a symbiotic relationship between those two types of organization. We kind of need each other, and I think we increasingly RMCs will be looking to enhance the way that those two organizations work together, and to use technology to improve that, to try and find efficiencies on both sides as well, as more as anything else. But also just to improve the communication. I think that's going to be quite critical going forward.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm pleased to report that we have some comments in the chat that people say they agree and they're nodding, and they also feel optimistic. So that's good to know. Rob, would you also agree?
I do, and nothing really to add. I think everyone's really summed it up well, but I'm so optimistic that I'm booking my flight to Seville later today.
Wow, that's pretty optimistic.
I'm with you, Rob.
Excellent. Okay,
I
great.
think the future will be a lot brighter if we can all meet in Seville in May.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Okay, excellent. Thank you ever so much. There are a couple of questions in the chat. I feel like we can probably, I'll take those away and we can discuss them. And we're going to have an RMC DSP session in Seville as well, and probably look at one or two topics in a lot more detail and actually be on stage and have that conversation in person. So that's definitely something to look forward to. I think we're all pretty optimistic as well that the conference will happen this time, and we'll be able to meet up in person, which will be amazing. So I think I'd just like to say thank you, really. Thank you all very much for your time, for your contributions. I'd say I definitely feel optimistic. I feel like we've been through an awful lot together as an industry in the last 2 years, and actually maybe are coming out the other side stronger, which is pretty remarkable. So yeah, thank you all very much. And thank you for listening. And this will at some point be on YouTube to watch again. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Much, Alistair.
Thank you, Alistair.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Alistair.
Alistair.